The sunlight spilled gently across my bedroom, slanting through the blinds in long golden stripes that painted the carpet in a pattern I had always loved. Today was meant to be different. Today, my daughter and I were supposed to be boarding a plane to Europe, wandering through cities that had lived in my imagination for decades. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments. I had imagined every detail: the scent of fresh croissants in the Parisian morning, the soft hum of gondolas gliding under Venice bridges, the warmth of the Mediterranean sun on our shoulders. I had bought myself a light jacket, wood bark with soft wool lining, imagining it draped over my shoulders as we strolled through ancient streets. My open suitcase on the bed looked like a tiny monument to excitement. Folded shirts, rolled trousers, and travel-sized toiletries, each item a small promise of the journey ahead. The soft buzzing of my phone cut through the quiet morning. I expected a reminder from the airline or a message confirming our departure time. I picked it up casually, only to be met with words that stopped my heart cold. "We're leaving without you. Todd prefers a family-only trip. Hope you understand." I stared at the screen as though it were a puzzle that could somehow resolve itself if I looked long enough. My thumb hovered over the reply button. Nothing made sense. My daughter, my own child, excluding me? From a trip I had meticulously planned, from a memory I had imagined sharing with her for years. I sank onto the edge of the bed, the navy jacket slipping from my hands. My heart felt hollow, as if a vital piece of me had been removed without warning. I had spent hours researching restaurants, printing itineraries, mapping out routes, and booking tickets. All of it now lay in useless fragments. I remembered laughing as I debated whether we should book the same dinner cruise in Paris or the Michelin-recommended bistro Lindsay had read about online. I had bought the tickets for both, never expecting to be ignored. I scrolled through my phone, searching for any hint that this was a mistake, any indication that perhaps they were joking or that the message was intended for someone else. But there was nothing. My daughter, my son-in-law, and my in-laws were already in Europe, or so it seemed from their social media posts. I could see it in my mind, my daughter smiling at the Eiffel Tower, Todd pretending to be enthusiastic, his parents beaming as though this was the perfect vacation, and me, left behind, a silent observer in my own home, my role reduced to financial support and forgotten presence. For the first time in years, I sat and questioned the nature of my relationships with them. Was this what family had always meant? Conditional affection? Gratitude only when it served them? I thought back over the years, a montage of memories both beautiful and bittersweet. Birthday presents carefully selected and wrapped, tuition fees paid to keep my daughter's dreams alive, last-minute emergency support when Todd had accidentally overdrafted his account or when the car they had been driving. Each memory now felt like a thread in a tapestry of exploitation I had been too naive to see. I sank deeper into the mattress, feeling the weight of years pressing down on me. My home, once a sanctuary of comfort and love, now felt hollow, echoing with absence. The walls were adorned with family photographs, each smiling face a reminder of how little my presence had been appreciated. I realized, painfully, that I had been taken for granted, that love and usefulness had been confused for too long. My financial generosity, my willingness to support and give, had been exploited. And now, at the pinnacle of that realization, I felt a fire ignite within me, a quiet, simmering determination. I opened my laptop and retrieved the property deed for the house I had purchased for Lindsay and Todd. The documents confirmed what I had suspected, but never fully acknowledged. The house was still legally mine. A plan began to form in my mind, precise and deliberate. If they wanted to treat me as irrelevant, then I would respond not with anger alone, but with action. Not out of malice, but out of a need to reclaim what had always been mine, and to reclaim the control over my life they had so casually dismissed. I made myself a cup of coffee, the rich aroma filling the kitchen and grounding me in the present. I sat at the table, the deed and my bank statements spread before me like pieces on a chessboard. My finger traced the lines of the deed, each word a reminder of years of planning and investment, of love disguised as obligation. This was my moment to stop being the passive provider and start being the person who controlled his destiny. The morning air was crisp, almost bracing, as I sat by the window with my laptop open. A part of me wanted to simply ignore the situation, to pretend the betrayal hadn't occurred. But another part, sharper and colder, insisted on clarity. I couldn't let their words linger in ambiguity. I needed proof. I opened my online banking account first. Years ago, in what I had believed was a gesture of trust and support, I had given Lindsay authorized access to my account. She had never abused it before, or so I had assumed. But now, faced with their exclusion from a trip I had funded, suspicion gnawed at me. Scrolling through recent transactions, my heart sank. There it was. An elegant Parisian restaurant, charged just 2 days ago, lunch for 4, including wine. A boutique purchase, luxury brand, charged to my account. Tickets to the Louvre and the Orsay museums, high-end hotels in central Paris, all paid with my money while they had excluded me entirely. I sank back in my chair, a mixture of disbelief and quiet fury rising within me. They had laughed, dined, and enjoyed the city at my expense, treating my generosity not as love, but as entitlement to exploitation. My mind replayed the message over and over. Family-only trip. Family only. Yet here I was, paying for the very family they had deliberately left behind. My chest tightened, but a strange clarity emerged from the anger. The patterns were unmistakable now. The calculated excuses, the careful omissions, the casual dismissals when I offered financial support. I had mistaken compliance for affection, generosity for gratitude. It was time for action. First, I needed to sever the financial ties they had relied upon. I navigated to the card management section and paused, my finger hovering over the Remove Authorized User button. This wasn't vengeance, it was assertion of control. A father had been treated as irrelevant, a provider abused, and it ended now. I clicked. The confirmation screen appeared. Are you sure you want to remove this user? My heart pounded. Yes, remove immediately. A small, almost imperceptible smile formed on my face as I watched the change take effect. For the first time in years, I felt a measure of power returning. The phone buzzed again. This time, a Facebook notification. Lindsay's post. Another complaint disguised as victimhood. Some people have no respect for family privacy, she had written. I scrolled through the comments. Friends expressing sympathy, others questioning the fairness of her situation. I closed the app without responding. Let her fury play out in public. It no longer concerned me. Next, I focused on the house. The property I had purchased for Lindsay and Todd on Maple Street, legally still mine, had been treated as theirs. They had promised to transfer the deed after mortgage approval, but procrastination and convenience had left the paperwork untouched. Now I realized the house was not theirs, and it could serve as the next step in reclaiming both justice and dignity. I contacted Marcus Chin, the real estate agent who had handled the purchase. His professional demeanor was reassuring, a sharp contrast to the emotional turbulence of my morning. I explained the situation and my intent to sell the property immediately. Marcus's eyes narrowed briefly, understanding the urgency without need for explanation. We'll need photos, maybe some staging, he advised. I agreed to everything, making it clear that the process had to be efficient. By afternoon, the property was listed. The market was favorable, interest immediate. Marcus assured me that offers could appear within days. I felt a strange satisfaction. Years of manipulation and disrespect had pushed me to this decisive action, and now tangible results were in motion. I spent the evening reviewing every detail of the sale. The listing, photographs, staging plans, even the storage unit arrangements for their belongings. Each action was deliberate, precise, and controlled. Unlike my previous generosity, which had been naive and emotionally driven, these steps were methodical, calculated, and entirely in my hands. Sleep came fitfully that night. Images of the European trip haunted me. The laughter, the indulgence, the casual disregard for my presence. Yet beneath the anger, beneath the hurt, I found a new sense of purpose. I wasn't angry at them alone. I was angry at myself for having allowed this pattern to persist for decades. Tomorrow would bring the first steps in reclaiming not just property, but autonomy, dignity, and self-respect. The morning sun illuminated my office as I prepared for the move. I contacted a small, reputable moving company, explaining the situation and requesting discreet and efficient service. Dave, the owner, understood immediately, his tone professional yet sympathetic. "We'll handle it respectfully," he assured me. That was all I needed. By 8 a.m., the moving crew had arrived. My instructions were precise. Everything in the house belonged to them, yet they were now merely property under my management. Each item packed, labeled, and transferred to storage symbolized not just material belongings, but the power shift I had initiated. As the movers worked, I discovered small details that brought a new layer of clarity. Photo albums, once precious mementos, revealed my absence in most key moments. Wedding pictures, holiday celebrations, birthdays, all places I had been present yet marginalized. My contributions, both financial and emotional, had been hidden, minimized, or ignored. I closed the albums gently, handing them over to the movers, each page a silent testament to the imbalance I had endured. By late morning, the house was cleared, each item securely stored, ready for the eventual sale. I drove home slowly, taking in the quiet streets, observing life continuing without pause, indifferent to my personal upheaval. Yet within me, a quiet revolution had begun, one that would restore agency, dignity, and respect. By afternoon, an offer had already arrived. A young couple, relocating for work, wished to purchase the house immediately. The numbers were favorable, the process efficient. Within hours, the property would change hands legally and irrevocably. I felt a surge of satisfaction. Years of misplaced loyalty and emotional labor had culminated in a decisive, lawful action that returned what was always mine. The following morning, the tension in the air was almost tangible. I had anticipated this moment for weeks, rehearsed it in my mind, yet the reality carried a weight I hadn't fully imagined. Lindsay and Todd were scheduled to return from Paris in the early afternoon. I knew they would step through the door expecting the familiar environment of entitlement, comfort, and obedience, but everything had changed. I positioned myself in the living room, a quiet observer ready to confront the storm. The room smelled faintly of polished wood and cleaning solution, the subtle signs of preparation. Every detail had been addressed. The house was orderly, possessions neatly packed in storage crates, legal documents prepared, and my emotions carefully contained. The front door opened, and immediately their expressions betrayed shock. Lindsay's brow furrowed, Todd's jaw tightened, and for the briefest moment, I saw vulnerability peek through the facade they wore so comfortably abroad. "Dad?" Lindsay's voice wavered, a combination of confusion and accusation. Why does everything look different?" I rose slowly, keeping my tone calm but resolute.
"It's different because the rules have changed. This house, the property, and the belongings are mine. I've made decisions you should have respected long ago, and now the consequences are here." Todd's eyes darted around the room, settling briefly on the storage crates. What are these? Why are our things in boxes?" His voice carried a mixture of panic and incredulity. "These are your things," I said firmly. "They are safe, but they are no longer under your control. You had every opportunity to honor the trust placed in you. Instead, you chose deception, exclusion, and disregard. I am merely responding accordingly." Lindsay's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her phone. I'm calling our lawyer, she said. But there was a hesitation, a falter in her otherwise confident demeanor. She knew, deep down, that this was a confrontation they could not easily escape. Call if you must, I replied, my voice unwavering. But the truth remains. You were given opportunities. You abused them. Now, justice is being restored, and it cannot be reversed. For a moment, silence dominated the room. Their reactions flickered between disbelief, frustration, and a hint of panic. Todd muttered something under his breath, an insult perhaps, or an attempt to undermine my authority. But I let it pass without acknowledgement. The confrontation had a rhythm, a psychological weight that was almost intoxicating. I watched as years of manipulation and entitlement collided with the reality of consequence. Lindsay's carefully constructed persona, polished and confident, now showed cracks. Todd's casual arrogance faltered in the face of undeniable truth. I walked toward them slowly, maintaining control of both the physical and emotional space. You must understand something, I said, my tone steady yet commanding. This is not personal revenge. This is accountability. You were entrusted with responsibilities, financial, moral, and familial. You failed. The consequences are not just legal, they are ethical. They reflect your choices. Lindsay's voice rose slightly, defensive but fragile. You can't just, this house, our things, you can't just take them. We expected. Her words trailed off, the gaps filled by my quiet authority. You expected that loyalty and trust would be limitless, I said. You expected that generosity could be manipulated without repercussions. That expectation is over. I am no longer a passive participant in your choices. Todd's anger finally surged, the first uncontrolled emotion he displayed. You think this makes you powerful? You think boxing up our stuff, listing the house, that's power? His tone was harsh, but the tremor betrayed fear. I leaned forward slightly, letting my eyes meet his. No, this is clarity. This is the understanding that actions have consequences. Power without justice is hollow. What I have now is neither power nor revenge. It is rightful restitution. Their silence was telling. Lindsay's phone remained in her hand, her fingers hovering over the screen.
Todd's stance stiffened, his confidence undermined by the gravity of the situation. I had anticipated every reaction, every attempt at deflection, every plea masked as indignation. And yet, watching them confront the results of their choices, I felt a subtle satisfaction, not in cruelty, but in the restoration of balance. The legal documents I had prepared for the house sale sat on the coffee table, visible, indisputable. I gestured toward them. The sale has been finalized. The property will belong to new owners within days. Your belongings are secure, but under my oversight. There is no ambiguity, no room for argument. This is reality. Lindsay's lips pressed into a thin line. You've really thought this through, she whispered, almost incredulous. I have, I replied. Every step, every action, measured and deliberate. Years of passive acceptance are over. The decisions you made abroad, using my resources and excluding me emotionally, were the final pieces of evidence I needed. They revealed the depth of disregard and entitlement that had been festering for years. Todd's voice softened, though not entirely with remorse. And now, what? You just leave us like this? I shook my head slowly. No, this is an opportunity for all of us. For you to reflect, to understand, to respect the boundaries you repeatedly violated. For me, it is a reclamation of dignity and autonomy. For our family, it is a chance to reset expectations, accountability, and respect. A long pause followed, the air heavy with unsaid words. Lindsay finally lowered her phone, her fingers tightening around it. Todd avoided my gaze, his posture defensive yet resigned. They understood, perhaps better than I could articulate, that the dynamics of our relationship had shifted irreversibly. As the day progressed, I oversaw the transfer of items into storage, ensuring every step was orderly, precise, and devoid of chaos. Each crate symbolized a lesson, not vengeance, but consequence. I noticed subtle gestures from both Lindsay and Todd, hesitation, careful avoidance, the first signs of acknowledgement that they had misjudged me for decades. By evening, the house was quiet again, a strange calm settling over the rooms that had once echoed with laughter, manipulation, and exclusion. I walked through each space slowly, reflecting on the journey. The confrontation had not been easy. It had been emotionally exhausting, psychologically intense, and morally complex. But it was necessary. In the solitude of the night, I finally allowed myself a moment of introspection. I thought about the years of misused trust, of emotional labor unappreciated, of loyalty exploited. I thought about the European trip, the silent betrayal, and the casual disregard for my presence. And I thought about the reclamation, financial, legal, and emotional, that had begun with small, deliberate steps. I realized something profound. Justice is not always loud, nor is it always dramatic. Sometimes it is quiet, precise, and deeply transformative. The confrontation with Lindsay and Todd was not merely about property or money. It was about boundaries, respect, and acknowledgement of truth. And as I turned off the lights and left the house, the city outside glittering with indifferent energy, I felt a sense of closure. Not complete, perhaps, but substantial. The path ahead would require vigilance, clarity, and continued assertion of boundaries. Yet for the first time in decades, I felt a quiet empowerment, a recognition that dignity, once compromised, could indeed be reclaimed. The days following the confrontation were oddly quiet. The house, now stripped of the usual clamor and entitlement, seemed almost surreal in its calm. Lindsay and Todd had retreated to temporary lodgings, their absence leaving both emptiness and relief in equal measure. I walked through the now subdued rooms with a keen awareness of what had changed and what had yet to settle in their minds. Each morning I reviewed the legal documents, ensuring the transition of property and possessions remained unchallenged. The meticulous organization of storage crates, receipts, and agreements gave me a sense of control that had eluded me for years. But beyond the practicalities, there was a deeper, more subtle layer of reclamation, emotional and psychological. I spent time in my study, reviewing old photographs, letters, and mementos. Images of family gatherings, celebrations, and shared vacations filled me with a bittersweet nostalgia. I realized that while Lindsay and Todd had chosen to exploit trust, the memories themselves were untarnished by their actions. They were a reminder that relationships are multi-layered. Some aspects can be cherished even when others are fractured. One afternoon I received a message from Todd. Hesitant, brief, and carefully worded, it was the first real attempt at communication since the confrontation. He wrote, "I need to understand. Maybe we were wrong. I don't know how to fix this, but I can see now that things weren't fair." I read the message slowly, savoring the rare acknowledgement of accountability. It was not an apology, not yet, but a crack in the wall of arrogance they had built over decades. I responded succinctly, emphasizing reflection, honesty, and the importance of acknowledging consequences rather than seeking immediate reconciliation. Lindsay, on the other hand, was silent. Her absence was deafening. I could feel her thoughts lurking in the shadows of every room, her self-reflection hidden but inevitable. Silence, I realized, can be as powerful as confrontation. It forces introspection, compels acknowledgement, and sometimes it is more instructive than any words. I began journaling extensively, capturing not only the unfolding events, but also my internal transformation. Writing became a therapeutic exercise, a means of processing both past grievances and the present shift in dynamics. I chronicled my feelings of betrayal, frustration, and the subtle satisfaction that comes from reclaiming one's dignity. The act of documenting in meticulous detail gave me a new perspective. Life is often a series of choices and consequences, and understanding that pattern allows for deliberate, measured action. One evening, while reviewing the house's records, I reflected on the European trip, the catalyst for this confrontation. It had been more than just a series of careless indulgences. It was a revelation of character. Lindsay's calculated charm and Todd's casual disregard had surfaced in stark relief, revealing patterns of entitlement and emotional exploitation. That clarity, though painful, was invaluable. It allowed me to redefine boundaries and expectations with precision. I also noticed subtle changes in myself. Where once I had hesitated, doubted, or deferred, I now acted with deliberation and confidence. The confrontation had been a crucible, stripping away insecurity and indecision. I felt empowered not by revenge, but by the integrity of my actions. This realization marked a turning point. Justice and accountability, when executed thoughtfully, can be profoundly liberating. Several weeks later, Lindsay reached out. Her message was tentative, almost fragile. "I don't know if you'll read this the way I mean it, but I need to say, I see now how wrong we were. I never thought we'd hurt you so deeply. I, I want to understand, and maybe I want to try to do better." I paused before responding, considering the implications. Her words were sincere, or at least they seemed to be, and they indicated a willingness to engage with accountability rather than entitlement. I replied carefully, emphasizing reflection, patience, and the necessity of demonstrating change through action rather than words alone. Over the ensuing months, the dynamics shifted further. Lindsay and Todd began attending therapy, individually and together, seeking to address long-standing behavioral patterns and familial dysfunction. I observed from a distance, respecting boundaries while maintaining my own emotional space. It was not immediate reconciliation. It was instead a slow, deliberate process of growth, understanding, and acknowledgement. In parallel, I focused on rebuilding personal projects and ambitions that had been neglected during years of familial tension. Travel, hobbies, and professional pursuits regained prominence. I found joy in small victories, whether a completed project, a quiet morning of reflection, or the simple satisfaction of having a home restored to order. These moments, once overshadowed by conflict, now felt vivid, purposeful, and affirming. I also engaged in conversations with friends and mentors, seeking insight into broader perspectives on accountability, forgiveness, and personal growth. These discussions enriched my understanding. Justice is not merely punitive, it is restorative, instructive, and ultimately transformative. Confrontation, when executed with clarity and integrity, can illuminate paths toward healthier relationships and deeper self-awareness. One afternoon, Lindsay visited. She did not enter immediately. She stood at the edge of the driveway, a hesitant figure seeking both acknowledgement and understanding. I greeted her calmly, maintaining the balance of authority and openness. Our conversation was tentative, punctuated by pauses and reflections. She acknowledged past wrongs, expressed a desire to rebuild trust, and sought guidance on meaningful ways to demonstrate accountability. Todd joined later, equally tentative. His approach was more guarded, tinged with residual defensiveness, yet he too recognized the necessity of reflection and behavioral adjustment. The three of us engaged in a series of structured dialogues, exploring past grievances, present accountability, and the potential for future reconciliation. These conversations were challenging. Emotions ran high, memories triggered old wounds, and moments of frustration emerged. Yet, through careful listening, structured discussion, and mutual acknowledgement, progress occurred. Lindsay and Todd demonstrated incremental but tangible growth.
They began to recognize patterns of entitlement, manipulation, and exclusion, patterns that had long governed their interactions with me and others. As the weeks turned into months, the transformation became evident. Lindsay, once imperious and dismissive, now exhibited humility and consideration. Todd, previously casual and self-assured, displayed thoughtfulness and respect. While the past could not be erased, the present offered the opportunity to redefine relationships based on honesty, accountability, and genuine effort. Through this journey, I discovered an essential truth. Confrontation, accountability, and boundaries are not acts of vengeance. They are tools of empowerment. They allow one to reclaim dignity, assert values, and cultivate healthier interactions. Rebuilding trust is neither instantaneous nor guaranteed, but it is possible when honesty, reflection, and deliberate action are prioritized. By the end of the year, a new equilibrium emerged. The house remained organized, the property secure, and my emotional space preserved. Lindsay and Todd continued their personal growth, attending therapy and engaging in measured, thoughtful interactions. Our family dynamics were altered irreversibly, yet a foundation of accountability, respect, and cautious optimism had been established. I stood by the large living room window one evening, watching the city lights flicker against the twilight sky. The journey had been arduous, emotionally taxing, and morally complex. Yet I felt a sense of peace. Not the naive peace of unresolved forgiveness, but a grounded, enduring peace born from clarity, integrity, and purposeful action. I reflected on lessons learned, the necessity of boundaries, the importance of accountability, the value of deliberate confrontation, and the transformative power of introspection. These lessons extended beyond familial interactions. They were applicable to all relationships, all decisions, and all endeavors. In the quiet that followed, I understood that life is a tapestry of choices and consequences. Every action reverberates, every decision matters, and every relationship reflects a dynamic balance of trust, respect, and integrity. The confrontation with Lindsay and Todd was a microcosm of these broader truths. Clarity, accountability, and reflection pave the way for growth, understanding, and meaningful change. And as I turned away from the window, I felt a quiet confidence in the knowledge that, regardless of what the future held, I had reclaimed my agency, restored balance, and charted a path forward defined by clarity, dignity, and integrity. The winter months arrived quietly, blanketing the city in soft light and muted sound. The house, now fully reclaimed and organized, reflected more than order. It reflected the journey we had endured. Every corner, every room carried the weight of past conflict, but also the promise of transformation. The presence of Lindsay and Todd, though still tentative, was now defined by accountability rather than entitlement. It was on a crisp December afternoon that I invited both of them to sit down in the living room for an unhurried conversation. This was not about confrontation, accusation, or even negotiation. It was about reflection and the conscious acknowledgement of change. The sunlight streamed through the windows, casting long shadows that seemed to underscore the gravity of the moment. Lindsay spoke first. Her voice, usually confident and unyielding, carried an unfamiliar vulnerability. "I've spent these months thinking about everything, about what I did, what we did. I can see now that my actions were selfish and that I disregarded your trust in ways that cannot be undone." Todd followed, more hesitant but equally sincere. I didn't realize the extent of my negligence. I acted without thought for the consequences, and I hurt someone who never deserved it. I want to do better, to change, even if it takes time." I listened quietly, absorbing their words not as absolution, but as the first signs of genuine accountability. I responded with calm precision. Acknowledging mistakes is important, but understanding the impact of those mistakes and actively working to change patterns is what truly matters.
Trust, once fractured, can be rebuilt, but only through consistent effort and honesty. We spoke for hours. The conversation meandered through memories of the past, the lessons learned, and the aspirations for the future. There were moments of tension, naturally. Old habits and defensiveness threatened to resurface. But each time, the dialogue returned to reflection and conscious choice. Slowly, a sense of shared understanding emerged, fragile yet significant. The weeks following that conversation were a period of deliberate transformation. Lindsay and Todd engaged in therapy and self-reflection exercises. They learned to identify the behaviors that had caused harm, to articulate their intentions with clarity, and to take responsibility without deflection. I maintained my boundaries, ensuring that my own emotional space remained protected while allowing them the opportunity to demonstrate growth. I, too, underwent a subtle but profound transformation. The confrontation and its aftermath had revealed strengths and insights within me that I had never fully recognized. Patience, resilience, and the ability to navigate complexity with clarity became guiding principles. I found satisfaction not in revenge, but in the restoration of dignity, both my own and potentially theirs.
During this time, I also invested in personal pursuits that had long been overshadowed by family conflict. My work flourished, creative projects advanced, and relationships with friends deepened. Travel became a source of joy, reflection, and inspiration, allowing me to see the world and myself from fresh perspectives. The house, once a battleground, became a sanctuary of growth and introspection. Spring arrived, bringing renewal in both the natural world and our personal dynamics. One afternoon, as cherry blossoms fell in delicate showers outside the window, Lindsay and Todd joined me in the garden. There was no grand gesture, no symbolic declaration, only the quiet acknowledgement of progress. We shared conversation, laughter, and moments of reflection, each interaction underscored by the conscious effort to maintain respect and integrity. It was in these quiet interactions that I realized a fundamental truth. Reconciliation is not an event, but a process. It does not erase the past, nor does it demand full forgiveness. It requires deliberate effort, accountability, and mutual recognition of growth. Lindsay and Todd were not perfect, but they were learning. And I, too, was evolving, learning to balance empathy with assertiveness, openness with self-protection, and reflection with action. As the months passed, subtle shifts became more pronounced. Lindsay's demeanor softened. Her once sharp insistence on control gave way to genuine curiosity and willingness to listen. Todd demonstrated consistency in his efforts, showing attentiveness and respect that had previously been absent. Our interactions were no longer defined by tension, but by measured engagement, reflection, and cautious optimism. I also began mentoring others, drawing on my experiences to guide individuals navigating complex interpersonal dynamics. My story, once private and burdened with resentment, became a source of insight for those seeking strategies to assert boundaries, navigate betrayal, and cultivate personal growth. The lessons I had learned, confrontation with clarity, accountability as empowerment, and reflection as transformation, resonated with a broader audience. One evening, sitting in the quiet of the study, I reflected on the full arc of the past year. The confrontation with Lindsay and Todd had been painful, emotionally draining, and morally complex. Yet it had yielded invaluable insights. The power of deliberate action, the importance of maintaining boundaries, and the potential for personal transformation through reflection and accountability. I realized, too, that closure is not always absolute. The past leaves its marks, and relationships are forever shaped by shared history. Yet, closure is not defined by forgetting or erasure. It is defined by understanding, acceptance, and conscious choice. By asserting boundaries, seeking accountability, and cultivating personal growth, I had achieved a form of closure that was both empowering and enduring. The final months of the year were marked by balance. Family interactions, though cautious, were constructive. Lindsay and Todd continued their personal development, their actions reflecting tangible change.
My own life flourished, guided by principles refined through experience. Clarity in decision-making, resilience in adversity, and integrity in all interactions. On New Year's Eve, standing in the quiet of the garden as fireworks lit the sky, I felt a profound sense of completion. The journey had been arduous, but it had yielded growth, understanding, and renewed perspective. The house, once a symbol of conflict, now reflected harmony and deliberate care. The relationships, once fractured, had been recalibrated with honesty, respect, and accountability. I understood in that moment that life is not defined by the absence of conflict, but by the response to it. True empowerment comes not from revenge, but from clarity, accountability, and deliberate action. Trust, once fractured, can be rebuilt. Not instantly, not perfectly, but meaningfully, through consistent effort, reflection, and growth. As the clock struck midnight, I felt gratitude, not only for the resolution achieved, but for the lessons learned along the way. The confrontation with Lindsay and Todd had been a crucible, testing patience, moral clarity, and emotional fortitude. It had revealed strengths I had not fully recognized and offered insights that would guide all future interactions. In the quiet aftermath, I embraced a renewed sense of purpose. Personal growth, the restoration of integrity, and the cultivation of meaningful relationships became guiding principles. I had reclaimed agency, restored balance, and navigated the complexities of human behavior with thoughtfulness and resolve. The journey, though challenging, had been transformative, leaving me stronger, wiser, and more deeply attuned to the dynamics of trust, accountability, and personal empowerment. And so, as the first light of the new year dawned, I stood with quiet confidence, aware that the past had shaped me but no longer defined me. The confrontation had been a turning point, a lesson in the power of deliberate action, reflection, and accountability. Lindsay and Todd's journey toward growth continued, as did mine. Each step forward grounded in integrity, clarity, and the enduring understanding that life's greatest challenges offer the richest opportunities for transformation. In the end, the house was more than a home. It was a testament to resilience, reflection, and renewal. The relationships, though forever altered, held the potential for genuine connection, built on honesty and mutual respect. And I, having navigated betrayal, confrontation, and the complexities of accountability, moved forward with purpose, clarity, and a profound sense of empowerment that would guide every choice yet to come. If you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe and stay connected with our channel.